Welcome to Boris FX Live, brought to you by AMD Ryzen Threadripper processors. Break free from the render bar. Realize your creative vision with the world's most powerful desktop processors.
Hello and welcome. My name is Ben Brownlee for Boris FX, and thanks very much for joining us for another Boris FX live event. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be focusing more on an artist and a piece of work that he has done. I'm very, very happy to have Ben Eshagpoor with us today. And he's going to be taking us through how he did the making of his new short film, which we'll also be looking at today. But before we get through anything, the whole reason that we're doing this live is that so we can be chatting with you. So if you haven't done so already, head on over to borisfxlive.com and you can start joining in the chat with us right there. You can also join us in our competition, which we are running to win a 1-year subscription of the, here we go. That's the competition, a 1-year subscription of the Boris FX suite. So that's everything that we make. Including Continuum, Sapphire, Mocha Pro, Silhouette, and Optics. And a lot of these tools you'll be seeing in the course of the next hour. So yeah, head on over to Boris FX Live, join the competition. You can see full terms and conditions there, and also join in the chat. You can also be chatting with us on YouTube Live as well. Sorry, on the YouTube Live channel as well. But I can't do this alone. Joining me as a co-host today is the inimitable Mr. Brian Fox. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Ben. How are you?
Look at that. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. And that's a very nifty little machine you have going on in the background.
Oh, thank you very much. Just like to apologize to everyone since I will be switching the show and co-hosting. All right, let's strap in. We'll have a good time, and I apologize for any glitches you see. Blame me for everything.
I think we always do, no matter what, no matter whether it's your fault or not.
Boom! Look at that. Hold on. We'll keep going. How about this? Other
way. No.
I can't even look anymore. All right. Enough fun.
So this is the type of professionalism, obviously, that we're going to be seeing from you the whole day.
Yes, sir.
So I think we'll stop messing around, and we will say hello to our guest, Ben Eshagpoor. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
And you
Welcome,
are live from
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Look at that.
As you can see by my cup right here.
That's it. We should all have cups from our geographic locations. That's it.
Oh, there you go.
And how are you today?
Where are you? I'm doing really good.
I am in Aarhus,
really
Denmark.
Good. Yeah, I just love hearing you say that.
Aarhus. Simple. AARHUS. Everyone loves it. Everyone's second favorite city in Denmark.
By the way, I'm going to be a little rude, and I'm going to correct you. It's pronounced Eshagpoor.
Oh, Eshagpoor. I'm off again, aren't I?
Okay.
We'll call you Ben from now on. I think that's probably
there.
easier.
There you go.
Yeah, we got the two Bens and a Brian.
Ben. I mean, we've known
Exactly.
each other a long time. I can freely admit to you, I have always been pronouncing your name Eshagpoor in my head. So
as most people do, that is the when in the typical English language, when you see the S and the H together, people usually pronounce the sh sound. So, but it sounds like it's spelled SHOG, hog, POOR. So.
yeah, your name terrifies me, to be honest with you. I see that written out, and I just fumble and freeze, and I don't know what to do. Even though you've explained to me many times, just Eshagpoor is like not how I, in my own arrogant self, think it should be pronounced. So I'll change the pronunciation.
You can blame my Assyrian grandfather. So
I do. I blame him completely.
We all do. We all do. He's made my list.
He's on all our lists. On all lists.
The fact that you have a list is fascinating in and of itself. So.
Thank you, Ben, for joining us.
May you
today.
never see the names on that list.
Yeah.
Oh no, thanks. Thank you very much, Brian, for having me. I absolutely 100%. See, I'm already stumbling all over my words. I thank you very much for having me because I love talking about this stuff, and it's always fascinating. The whole filmmaking process in and of itself is fascinating. So any chance that I can get to talk about filmmaking, I love doing it. So even my own.
This is going to be a fun one, right? Because Ben, Mr. Brownlee, I know me and you both have a ton of questions to ask on this one. So
yep.
this is going to be fun. Ben, you and I have known each other for a long time. I love to tell the story. Going back to Gen Arts, you filled in for me on a demo run in Los Angeles with Nick when I couldn't make it out. And I'll tell you this. I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but you absolutely terrified me 24 hours out because I was like, uh-oh, what's going to be going on? And then you did a phenomenal job, but I believe you did all the work for prep the night before. Right? So, which, by the way, is the best type, as anyone knows, the best type of presentation, right? Like, if you do it weeks before, it's going to be all stale. But if you did it the night before,
and
I remember, yeah.
No, I think I can't remember. Was that the first time that I demoed for Sapphire, or was that the second time? It must have been the first time.
No, I think it was the second time. No, it was the second time because
it might.
Yeah, when I came on board, Nick had already worked with, and Nick was like, Nick was like 100% confident. Nick was like, Ben will crush it. Like, Ben's gonna crush it. Like, but I remember the night before I was like, oh, there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, and so what's funny about that trip too, because I think the first place that we went to was Oprah's new network OWN. And but what was hilarious about that entire trip is that I think I maybe did 1 or 2 presentations out of the half a dozen places that we went to. Everything else, they just gave us a tour and that was it. And I was like, okay.
that's the best type of that's the best type of day. It was I remember coming back from Nick, and I think he texted me during the day and was like, basically, because Nick and I had just started working together too full time at that point. So it was like he was like, he's crushing it, and it was like, I remember even more of that. I remember I learned a lot being like, it has to be less about putting together a presentation, more just about knowing products and being able to answer questions on the fly, which I think we crushed. So all right, enough past history though.
Oh, okay. All right. Fine.
I mean, let's
move into the future.
Yeah, we could commit all day. Ben's probably like,
we've only got an hour.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Ben.
How much time did we kill already? Oh, almost 10 minutes. Yes.
Oh no. Well, I think we'll what we'll do then is we will take a look at the short film that you made, and then we'll discuss a little bit about how it came to be, and then have a little look at some of the particular moments in the film as well. So we're gonna run the thing. It's about 4 minutes long, and as you're watching this to the audience, find the bits that you're finding most interesting, or you've got the most questions about. Don't keep those questions to yourself. Tap them in straight away in the chat box in YouTube or borisfxlive.com, and we will have a lot to talk about afterwards. So let's run VT.
Okay, roll it. Oh, it's me. Oh, hold on.
It is you. Yeah, please press that.
I wish I could play piano and write music like you. I wish I could take pictures like you. I wish I could write stories like you. I've heard statements like this my entire life. How do you compose a melody that no one has ever heard? How do you conceptualize a universe that nobody has ever been to or even seen? How do you get inspired to combine a bunch of ingredients into a dish that no one has ever tasted? How do you create something out of nothing? And the truth is that most artists can't answer that question themselves, because creative inspiration is as elusive to them as it is to the rest of the world. art is not truth. Picasso said that art is a lie that makes us realize the truth that is given to us to understand. It's the artist's job to know the manner in which to convince others the truthfulness of his lies. Art in any form is not just about telling a story, it's also about having the courage to live that story. Life informs every artist's ability to create. An artist can take the chaos in the world and give birth to a new one. It's how we communicate with that world. An artist can wash from the soul the grunge of everyday life and transcend the human experience. And every artist has a specific set of tools to help them achieve that ambition. Painters use brushes, musicians use instruments, photographers use cameras, and in this day and age, everyone uses a computer to not just help in the creation of that art, but to disseminate that art and tell their story to the world. Fear, courage, loss, triumph, desolation, hope, uncertainty, faith, agony, love, pain, comfort, defying the gods, defying the odds, life. Life is art. Every story begins in the darkness of one's mind and soul, and through life is slowly exposed to the light that is hope, and hope is what gives power to dreams. Langston Hughes said, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." If all that sounds too big and too bold and too hard, that's because it is. You may not think that you were gifted with the ability to do anything creative in life. Your story isn't confined to a certain subset of expertise that is more commonly associated with art. Art is about connecting the seemingly disconnected. The journey and the perseverance to run the race that is set before you, to perfectly display the amazing creation that is you. Those are stories we're telling. Those are stories the world needs to hear. So, what story do you want to tell?
Fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic. It
Wow.
blows me away each time I see it.
Great job, Ben. Great job. I mean,
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
no, I mean, you know, I know I told you when you first hit YouTube with it, I sent you, my initial thoughts, but
Yeah.
just blown away still, like,
Yeah.
knowing how much work goes into that, right?
Yeah. This took me, sorry, I'm looking at my screen. I probably shouldn't be. I should be looking at the camera. This took me from inception to completion. I would say probably a little over a month. It, probably could have taken less time had I not been doing everything myself. But also too, I was kind of a little nitpicky because it was me, and because I had a little bit of time to kind of do it and take the time to do it right. I spent that time, so I, as we'll see as I walk through this process, there were things that I just didn't leave alone. I had to tweak things here and there and whatnot. So, but yeah, it took a lot of time, and I'm extremely happy with the way that it turned out. It's funny because the version that you just saw is technically an edited version, so I've been toying with the idea of putting out a director's cut, but we'll see. Because that means there's another minute at least a minute that you don't see on the screen there on the final product. that I left on the cutting room floor, and it wasn't an easy decision to make, but at the same time, I think that it packed that much more power into the 3 minutes that you do see, and so I'm very, very happy with how it turned out, and so. I think, like I said in the film, we all have, we're all artists, and we all have different tools to use. And like one of the things that was left on the cutting room floor is I talked about how, whether you're a mechanic or you're a scientist or a chef. Well, I talk about a chef in the film itself, but it doesn't matter what you do, because art is about connecting the seemingly disconnected. And so however that happens, or however that takes place in a person's life, it's art. It really truly is, because when you think of people like Eminem, or well, even George Lucas for that matter, a lot of people, there was actually a short film that came out about, I want to say 96, no, about 97, 98. It was a USC thesis film called George Lucas in Love, and they took the Star Wars universe and merged it with Shakespeare in Love. And so very much like Shakespeare in Love, you see Romeo and Juliet play out in the course of, Shakespeare's actual life. And so the same thing with this, you see Star Wars play out in the course of George Lucas's life as a student at USC. And so whether it's that or, somebody like Eminem, one of the things that I've always appreciated about Eminem, especially when he first hit the scene, was there's a raw energy to that music, and that's his life. I mean, he took his life and he used his life to make art, and to talk about that. I have a comedian, good friend who's a comedian, and he was physically abused as a child, and he took a lot of that pain and a lot of that hurt and turned it into comedy. And so as artists, we do that. One of the first creative things that I ever did was write music. And, my earliest memory of creativity is walking into class every day in second grade and asking the teacher if I could play this new song that I wrote. And I'm sure it sounded like a bunch of noise and garbage and everything like that, but she humored me, and she allowed me to come in, and she allowed me to sit down and play. I had no idea what I was playing. And fast forward, 45 years, well, I can't do the math, but almost 40 years later, my 7-year-old son is doing the same thing. He'll come and he'll show me this, the sheet music that this piece that he wrote, or gosh, yesterday he was working on a comic book, and I'm just like, it's so amazing to me to see the light bulbs firing in people's brains to, I got this idea, I want to put it down. But it's not limited to, somebody writing music or words on a page or anything like that. I mean, when I see somebody, build something amazing and wonderful, and just wonder, where did you get the inspiration for that? So that was kind of the message that I was hoping to try and communicate, is that whatever it is that you do in life, it's art, because your life informs that thing that you create, whatever it is. And, whatever experiences that you have or that you're going through, there is a way to express that in something that's not just helpful for you and cathartic for you, but it benefits the world, because, there are people out there that can identify maybe with what you're going through in life. And, and so to me, that's one of that's kind of been a passionate theme, if you will, that I've had for a long, long time. And so I was very thankful. I have a partnership with Puget Systems, and one of the things that we were talking about was, okay, what can we do? Is there something that we can do? And I said, well, why don't we show people what you can do with your machine? And you know, to me, that makes so much more sense than, you know, doing an unboxing video or something like that, or whatever it was. And so technically that was, I mean, we were initially planning on doing something completely different, but I was back in July, we were visiting my father and family in Arizona. Sorry, excuse me. And I, to be honest with you, I can't even remember what stirred this. I think I had just gone out and taken some pictures around the area that they live in Arizona and whatnot. And I just kind of had this sense of urgency, if you will. And so I literally just, while we were on this trip, I sat down, I opened up my laptop. I brought up Final Draft, which is my writing tool of choice for everything. And I just started writing down ideas, and I just started looking at things and various different things. And probably about a week or so later is when I actually kind of had a version that I then sat down at the computer and just, you know, reading, doing a live read. And then from there, once I had the live read, I had, because I, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I write music as well too. And I scored this, I wrote the music for this as well too. And so I had an idea in my head. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. I had an idea in my head, music idea in my head, which is the opening, you know, kind of chord progression. That idea had been going around in my head, but I needed, you know, I had kind of an overall theme. I didn't have an overall theme, but I had an overall feeling of what I wanted. I wanted things to kind of start out feeling a little uncertain and feeling a little almost kind of a memory from the past, which is, you know, kind of how it starts out. And then I wanted it to build and rise and, you know, kind of give you this kind of very epic, you know, triumphant feel in the middle, and then kind of taper off, you know, kind of towards the end to where we kind of to where it kind of lives right now. And so so that process was what I did first. And then once I was happy with where that was, I then started to kind of fill in the visual holes. And the opening sequence is, again, the opening sequence is pretty much the only sequence that I really kind of, well, I take that back. The opening sequence, I had a very clear vision of what I kind of wanted there, and I knew there were things that I was going to shoot, but I also knew because of COVID and because of the time frame, I wasn't going to have time to shoot everything that I wanted to shoot. So I started to kind of fill in some of the visual holes. Actually, Brian, if you want to go, if we can share my screen.
Hold on one second.
Sure. I'm going to actually show kind of some of the process.
Yes, let's take a step back if we could, just to sort of
yeah, sure.
get it clear in my head. So you've got the script, you're working on the script here. You do the Scratch VO for it, or
yes.
Are you going? Yeah, you're going straight in for the Scratch VO.
Well, what's funny is that sorry, I was going to say is initially my thought process was the initial read that I did was only going to be Scratch, like you said. But it ended, I don't know if it was because I scored to that Scratch VO that I ended up being very happy with it. There were only a couple of things that I inserted, if you will, but the Scratch VO is pretty much, you know, and not pretty much, is what ended up being the actual VO. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You can continue.
Excellent. No, I mean, that actually, it sort of, that was going to be sort of my next thought, is that you've got the VO down, and then you come in and you score. And at that point, though, when you're writing the score, are you thinking of it as this is going to be the finished piece, and you're going to time the film to the finished score, or are you going to sort of go, well, this is where I am with the score? Okay, you lock down the score pretty much straight away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Once I had gotten the score done, I knew that, because I didn't want to, I'm not a, I don't consider myself any kind of a film composer. And so my experience is such that I don't really have, and well, a couple of things. I don't have the experience to go through and, kind of do a spotting session and figure out, okay, I need to hit this place. Okay, this needs to move here, and I need to do this. I didn't, and the other part of it too is I didn't want, the impatient side of me. I didn't want to have to go back and rescore anything.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that the score that I had was almost, not necessarily 100%, but almost 100%. And so once that was finished, that's when I went into, because in my mind too, as an editor, it's easier for me to fill in the visual gaps than it is for me to go back and fill in the musical gaps.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that was tight before I actually started any editing or anything like that.
That makes sense. I mean, that's so you've got your audio frame that you're then going to work in.
Yes.
Work in the visuals with. Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have a look then at once you get past the scripting session, I think we've got a few people in chat who are actually asking about having a look at the timeline as well, and just seeing how the timeline
absolutely
looks.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let me jump in while you switch over. Actually, we don't even have to do that. We can just jump into this shot. It's so funny you brought up the Eminem comparison. I think that's a really accurate one, because like when I watched this video for the first time, what really hit me over the head was the emotion and the passion behind the music, and knowing that you did compose that music. That's not a stock track, right?
No.
Which, by the way, is not lost on me that you're like what? It's a good thing I don't have to go head to head with you in the other edit suite, right? Because no big deal. You're just composing music. But like that to me is the same passion and raw emotion that exists, and definitely Eminem. And I won't even say Eminem's early stuff, like Eminem's whole career, right? That's really always what kind of drew me to him in that way. Like, let alone skill and let alone technique, but just that like raw anger that exists in like so much of his music.
And by the way, it makes perfect sense to me why a producer as dominant as Dr. Dre would kind of bring him under his wing, because those two were in my mind just a perfect match right out of the gate. And I don't know if you've ever seen the HBO documentary series, The Defiant Ones, but that it's one of my favorite documentaries ever. It really is great. But yeah, Dr. Dre similarly, he took what he knew how to do, and he took what was going on in his life and he put it into his music. John Singleton is another one. When I saw Boys in the Hood, back in 90, when did it come out? 91, 92.
Yeah, somewhere there.
When I saw it when it came out, I didn't see, I immediately identified with those kids, and so I didn't see color or anything other than that. I saw similarities. There were things that I identified with in those characters and how they were growing up. And I mean, we weren't dirt poor or anything like that, but we didn't have money. And, and I amazingly had, an amazing grandfather and amazing grandmother and amazing father who, paid for our private school education to kind of get us out of, kind of the ghetto that we were kind of living in, and put us into a much better environment. So in that regard, I identified with those kids, because at one time we did live in a community that for all intents and purposes is ghetto, and we didn't know any better. We were kids, but we got out of that, and we made something, or tried to make something of our lives. And so I've always identified with those types of movies and those types of stories where somebody makes something out of themselves. And so there's something about that has always kind of that I've always identified with, and that I've always really clung to. And so in this regard, I kind of wanted to communicate that message as well too. As you're seeing my screen right here, and you're seeing this is final draft. And part of the reason, I don't know if it's the filmmaker part of me or whatever it is, but ever since I started reading scripts and whatnot, and having this Courier New font and whatnot, if for whatever reason it's hard for me to write any other way. So you're seeing the script here, and this is basically the starting process of that. This is actually a later draft. This is actually, I think, more the final draft. But I always write all my ideas down on paper, just so I can visualize it, visualize the words, and then I go from there. So let's go to my timeline here. So this is actually the final version of it. And you can kind of see a lot of, let me actually make some room here, because we don't really need to see the screen so much. As you can see here towards the end, you'll see kind of some of the VO. I mean, it's the same VO, but I kind of chopped it up because, again, it was easily, actually, let me go to here. Let me go to this timeline right here. So this is actually the first timeline that I started with. And as you can see right here, I mean, it's a good minute longer than what the final version was. And as you can kind of see in this first timeline, I mean, this is kind of the beginning process. I started to kind of lay down things as temp to kind of start to kind of get a visual idea. But from there, I really actually kind of quickly moved on from that and actually started filling it out with this is something I shot. This is my son playing piano. And this is actually my actual script library right here, from A Time Gone, where I actually worked in TV development, and we actually had access to a script library. This is actually a piece of music that I wrote in high school, that really kind of, I don't know why I never pursued music. Maybe I didn't think I was good enough, but I think it's always been near and dear.
My friend. I think you definitely pursued music.
Well, yeah, I guess in more of a
you mean like
traditional sense,
as a full career. Because
correct,
I agree.
Correct.
You definitely could have. You've also found an outlet for it in this world as well.
Yeah. And so then this David Ariev gave me permission to use some footage from something that he created, because I needed something that looked otherworldly to fulfill that gap. And then I just kind of started filling in the gaps from there. We'll come back to that shot later. And that's my other son right there. And then, so I started to kind of fill this in right here. And then let's get to, all right. So this is some artwork that I filmed. That artwork my older son created when he was 4. Was he in preschool?
27 years old.
Yeah. And then I, started to kind of fill some things out here in the timeline. This is kind of that version right here. And then we go to kind of the final version, which I took a lot of, as you can kind of see right here, I took a lot of stuff and I dynamic linked it from Premiere into After Effects to kind of finish in After Effects. I've never been happy with the traditional dissolve inside of Premiere, and so I've always preferred taking it into After Effects and kind of doing a kind of a force opacity type of a dissolve. I've always liked that a lot more, because I have, I think most of it has to do with the fact that in Premiere I actually have access to the curves of the ins and outs of that transition, whereas in Premiere I don't have access to those curves. So it, to me, it always kind of makes a little bit less of a filmic dissolve, if you will. But I have no problem using the cross dissolve as a transitional element between shots. But when you're fading up and fading down, I don't always feel like it gives me the look that I'm going after. But I basically dynamic link all of these things into After Effects, and I kind of finish there. And I know this sequence right here, if it'll come up, there we go. This sequence right here, I know Brian wants me to talk about at some point, but so this is the timeline. This is kind of the basic timeline of how things, kind of work and go and whatnot. And as you can kind of see down here, on audio track 1 is the VO. I try to have my audio, my VO, or any dialogue or anything like that. I usually have those on tracks 1 and 2. Typically, I usually put music at the bottom, but in this particular instance, because the music was so much more important than the sound design elements, that's on track 2 here. And then after that, you see a bunch of sound effects and stuff like that, that kind of added to a little bit of the sound design element to that. And do you want me to go? Is there anything else you want me to talk about? Do we want to go into, kind of?
Well, we have so many questions, right? I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure.
I don't know if
questions. I'm like, I don't want to.
I don't know. Yeah, I just don't.
Ben, why don't
I know.
You
I just
go?
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure I answered the question of the person who wanted to look at the timeline.
Yeah. Ben, why don't you take it and I'll chime in, because I know we're gonna jump all over each other with questions. So go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, we got so many. I think one of the ones I want to start with, though, there's a few. There's so many moments in the film, but there's a couple of real kind of ones where you just go, and one of the first ones is the transition around about 30 seconds, which is
yes,
that sort of infinite push.
Yes. You're talking about this one, right?
There's a couple of, that's the one, yeah. And there's a couple of different versions of that you do. So if it's possible, just to talk a little bit about that, that's
yeah, absolutely.
That would be fantastic.
So I actually the magician revealing his tricks. It's kind of a two-part cheat, if you will. So where's the shot? Where are we here? There it is. Okay. So this shot right here, actually, let me go into. So this is a piece of stock footage, and the only reason I used the stock footage was because it was perfect for what was going on in my head, and B, for me to actually go in and find that model or find a model of a human person, get that kind of subsurface scattering look. I mean, just getting all of that together, it would have taken me probably at least a week, if not more, and the render time, because this is 4K. So that's actually a piece of stock footage, and I'm going to let's reveal that. So here is one of the cheats, if you will. So this particular piece of stock footage is actually 2 parts. So it's the eyeball and then zooming into the eyeball. Here we go. Come on, zooming into the eyeball, and then we see this big bang explosion. So that's the piece of stock footage there. And I could have left that alone, but I didn't want to leave that alone. It didn't feel as dynamic as I wanted it to be. And as you can kind of see in my timeline here, actually, let me disable that, and then here's the actual track itself. And if I increase the so here we have, hang on, what happened there? So some of the stuff I have speed ramped. Okay, it's not showing me my speed ramping. So I went through and I kind of cut this up a little bit, and I kind of did some speed ramping in here and there and whatnot. And then actually, so this is actually the Premiere timeline. Let me hop into, because I finished this off inside of After Effects. I think it's, no, that's the opening shot. So it would be this one here. Oh no, here it is at the end of this one. So, okay. So orange right here is that shot. And I use a product. I use it regularly on almost every project that I do. It's called Animation Composer, and Animation Composer is we'll go right here. Let me turn the sound off. So one of the biggest things that I use from Animation Composer is I use their Filmmaker's transition. And so what's really, really great about these transitions is they're basically pre-comps. They come into the composition, they come into the After Effects composition as a pre-comp, as a pre-comp with collapsed transformations and whatnot. So so it basically acts as an adjustment layer to everything below it. And what I like about these transitions and these cuts is that each one of these kind of come in with a marker that's the cut point. So that's the actual, where the actual footage would be, or the cut point of the actual footage itself. And then it automatically, through expressions and whatnot, figures out. So from that cut point, that's kind of the 0 mark. And then anything before that is the in point, and everything after that is the out point. And so it times the transition of the actual effect based on the length of your pre-comp, if you will. So from here all the way to the beginning of the composition, that's the intro to that cut. So so again, it's 2 cheats basically, but what I did, the other thing that I added to that is, and this is one of those instances where, I could have left the stock footage as it is, but it didn't feel as dynamic as I was kind of hoping or wanting it to be. So I then, on top of that, especially when we go to the kind of this big bang explosion, I wanted a sound wave. I wanted to, I wanted to feel that explosion visually a little bit more. And so from there, I did add, I actually tried a bunch of different things. I tried Warp Waves 2, and Warp Puddle, which is one of my favorite. I love how that's titled, because it is. It's like a little puddle when you
need a puddle. Sometimes you need a puddle.
Sometimes you do need a puddle.
Sometimes you're doing a news spot about the rain. Right?
And so, as you can see, it's got an S in front of it, so that means it's a sapphire effect. And so all of those things combined, and then of course that's an adjustment layer that I've keyframed. The amplitude and the frequency. So all of those things, plus on top of that, the sound effect that I have playing on it, it all kind of works together and comes together beautifully to kind of, at least in my, for me, it gave me the exact feeling that I was going for, that I wanted in this particular shot. So so that did it for me there. And since we're kind of already talking about transitions, I'm actually going to go into so in this section right here,
you've just gone straight into the next part that I was going to ask about. So this is great.
Let me make one comment though.
Yes.
Amazing work on that last transition. Such like ooey gooey, like really, really slick, seamless work on that. That's one of the first things that really stuck out to me, was like that you crushed it with those seamless transitions. Like, and from someone who's tried to do that, it can go wrong very easily if you don't get the feel and the animation and the sound right. All of a sudden, like, we're all such jaded viewers, we're all like, it's a transition. But to win, like, like in a bitter old viewer like myself over, and to like let it just wash over me, as you kind of took me through this like, ridiculous like comps as you're going like shot. It just definitely A+ work on that.
Well, I appreciate that, and to a certain extent, that's kind of it's one of the utmost compliments that I could receive from somebody who like yourself. Again, we've known each other for a long time. But somebody like yourself who has seen it all can be, genuinely wowed by something like that. it makes me feel like I did what I was trying to, I accomplished what I was trying to go after. And so this particular sequence right here, actually, so this was one of the other sequences in the film that I actually had in my head from the very beginning. When, you know, I wanted this, when I start to talk about all of these different emotions that, you know, that we experience in life. All right, timeline is freezing. Here we are. So that's the world. There we go. So, you know, we all, these are all, you know, kind of universal feelings and emotions that we all kind of go through in, excuse me, in various different ways throughout our lives. And so this particular segment, again, like I said, is one of the two kind of visual segments that I did have in my head when I was writing this. And I wanted to kind of have this, well, actually, literally, I wanted to have this merry-go-round of emotions, you know, kind of that we go throughout our lives. And so kind of that was kind of the idea that was going in my head. Is I wanted to have, first of all, trying to visualize an emotion. It's very difficult. I spent a lot of time on Google looking for references of like, okay, how do I display faith? How do I display uncertainty? How do I display, you know, various different things? So some of these, you know, kind of some of these images came about from, you know, kind of just doing some research on, you know, on a kind of how other people have, you know, kind of visually, whether it's a meme or something like that. I just kind of wanted to get an idea in my head of how other people are, or not how other people are, or a good way to visualize some of these things, because it's very, very difficult to visualize an emotion or to actually show people kind of what you're feeling. And so that was probably the biggest challenge for this particular section. And this section, I think, actually probably took the longest to make, not just because it took a long time. I mean, I did a lot of research on this section in trying to find, you know, kind of the best way to kind of visualize each one of these little sections. And so once I had each one of these sections visualized, it meant me then going in and having to build it. So so this is part of why this particular section took the longest to do. You know, like we have something like
when you
like this.
Sorry.
Yes. No. Yeah.
When you're visualizing something like this, are you building up obviously you're not just jumping straight into it. Are you building up like a mood board or drawing sketches by hand?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. As I was building up a mood board. I can't sketch to save my life. So I was relying on, you know, kind of the Google search images basically to kind of give me an idea of kind of where I was going or what I needed to do or and whatnot. So which,
Gotcha.
By the way, I mean, you know, there's probably no better research tool than Google, than the internet. Because, you know, we're the internet technically was created a lot longer, but anyway, there's such a wealth of information out there, and sometimes the hardest thing is to figure out the right search terms to bring up the search results. So some of that was part of why it took so long to kind of find what I wanted, because I had to figure out how to tell Google to find what I was looking for. So, which is a challenging task when you don't know necessarily how to vocalize what you're looking for. It's hard to tell a machine to go look for it. But I was pretty successful in finding or in getting an idea, you know, kind of a little vignette or a little scene to kind of give a visual representation of each one of these emotions. And so I went from there. So, but like I said, I had this kind of, you know, this merry-go-round, this kind of revolving door idea in my head where I wanted to kind of spin between each one of these. So when I was creating each one of these, again, this is a little bit of a cheat as well too, because I had the idea in my head of wanting to do that particular kind of revolving door effect, if you will. And so that's how I built these animations. They're all 90 frames, but I literally have, this is in cinema, and I have the camera on a sphere or spline. I'm sorry, a circle spline, and it's literally just dollying around that particular point of interest. And so the first 15 frames and the last 15 frames is kind of a whip pan, if you will, or whip dolly in that regard. And then I knew, because again, because I know, it's very important for artists to kind of know the tools that they have at their disposal to create with. And I'm very fortunate enough to have a lot of tools, and sometimes that in and of itself is cumbersome, because when you have so many tools at your disposal, it's hard sometimes to figure out and pick and choose which ones you're going to use. And so, I've said to people before, especially in regards to writing music, I felt like I was more prolific at writing music when I had less musical instrument choices to play around with. So one of the things that I try to do now as an artist, kind of a more evolved artist, if you will, is I try to force limitations on myself. Because when you force limitations on yourself, you're forcing yourself to work within a certain amount of parameters. I love this. I love the story of both Star Wars and Indiana Jones. When George Lucas was going around, shopping around both of those movies, the first place that I had the privilege of working at here in Los Angeles was a company called Phoenix Pictures. And as an intern, I interned there, and then I got hired on. And as an intern there, I remember one of the creative executives asked me to come sit in on a pitch meeting that they were having with a writer-director. And the pitch itself was completely uneventful and very bizarre and very weird. But when I got up from the meeting, when it was over with, I got up from the couch that I was sitting on, and I happened to see on the wall this framed letter that was on United Artists letterhead. United Artists was a big studio in the 70s. And it was a letter from that particular creative executive to her boss at the time, which actually happened to be her boss at Phoenix Pictures, where she basically had attached that letter to a script and suggested that he read that script, and that she thought that it was something that United Artists should really consider doing. And that script was Star Wars. And I looked at her and I said, "Is this what I think it is?" And she says, "Yep, it is." And I said, "You mean you submitted this script to this executive and he passed on Star Wars?" And she was like, "Yep." And I was like, wow. But if you know the history of Star Wars, every studio passed on Star Wars. Every studio. Nobody wanted to touch it because nobody understood it. Because nobody had the vision that George Lucas had in his head. And when they finally got to Fox didn't want to do it for the budget that George Lucas had. And so Fox said, "Hey, we'll do this movie for I want to say half of the budget that they were requesting." So, those limitations that were pushed onto Lucas forced him into paring down his story into what we now know as what we all consider the original Star Wars, which is Episode 4. But none of us knew that at the time. We only just knew this one movie. And then fast forward, after the success of Star Wars, after the success of Jaws, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are shopping around Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and nobody wanted to touch it, even though they had all of these huge blockbuster successes behind them. And Paramount finally almost did the same thing as Fox with Star Wars. "We'll do this for half of what you want." So I say all of that to say that limitations are good. You shouldn't think limitations as something that are preventing you from achieving what you want. You should look at limitations as something that helps you fashion and form your idea into something better. I was literally having this conversation with my 7-year-old last night, trying to get him, because he was writing something, and I had to tell him, I said, you can't be afraid to make mistakes when you first write. You have to write, because if you hold yourself back by the mistakes, you're not going to finish. You're quit. And a lot of people do. A lot of people quit once they hit that brick wall. So
great advice.
I say a little bit.
I wish my 7-year-old was at your dinner table getting this fantastic advice. No. In all seriousness, I completely agree with you. Like Wyden and Kennedy, right? Like, good Lord, like, Nike, one of the best agencies out there. In my opinion, the best agency. Fail harder, written in massive, massive sculptured letters when you walk through the door. Like, let people know when you walk through these doors, this is what we expect. You do make mistakes. You must make mistakes, and you must embrace that. You must embrace that. And
that's the key. And that's the key right there, is embracing the failure, because most people don't understand. They think that if they fail, they are literally a failure. But no, that just means you're human. Everybody makes mistakes. It's how you respond to those mistakes that determines how, whether you're going to succeed or not succeed. And so that was a really long roundabout way of saying that, I know the tools that I have, and I know that I could, kind of go in an infinite amount of directions. But I was having to, in a lot of ways, limit myself to some of those things. But anyways, because I know the tools that I had when I was envisioning this kind of revolving door feel to it, yes, I did build the animations out that way, but I also knew that I was going to bring them into Animation Composer. And let's see here. It's not.
And so someone was asking in chat what you were using to build those animations. Just what software you were using.
Oh, that's a really great question, and the answer is very simple: Cinema 4D.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Use, as you can see in kind of my icon tray down here. I have probably more versions of Cinema than I probably should have on this machine, but I was using Cinema 4D R20. Because as I was doing this, I have S22, but it was a little buggy, so I just kind of stuck with R20 because it was stable and it allowed me to finish what I needed to finish. And then the render, I use Octane to render. Octane is my preferred render engine of choice, because Octane really kind of appeals to my my photography background. And so I love, and plus also too, I always get the terminology mixed up. I can't, is Octane a biased renderer or an unbiased renderer? Anyway, I like all like Redshift. Yeah, Redshift's physically based and whatnot, but I like the out of the box feel that I get with Octane, and I don't want to have to do much tweaking after the fact. And so so something like this, this is actually another perfect example to kind of show off, which is, this, I used Megascan assets to kind of build out the scene, with the exception of some of these trees. Some of these trees are a plugin by 3D Quaker called Forester, which also gave me some grass elements as well too. And then I kind of went from there with some of that. So, having those tools at my disposal to kind of be, and actually this, I don't know if Jonathan Winbush is watching the stream, but this is a shout out to him as well too. We had an early conversation. I don't know how early the conversation was, but we talked about the possibility of doing some of these in Unreal, but I didn't really know Unreal. I could have watched his tutorials, but I just didn't have the time to kind of figure out kind of a new program and all that kind of stuff. So in hindsight, it would have been a nice, wonderful test to kind of play around with this stuff in Unreal. But again, for me, the goal was just getting it done. And so ended up not going that route. But so on top of, what you saw in the Premiere timeline, again, we're going to go back to Animation Composer. And as you can kind of see right here with some of these, these are some of these are the same transitional elements. But when I had initially put these transition effects on top of it, it gave me the look that I wanted. Well, I mean, it gave me the feel of what I wanted, but for some reason I was kind of like, it feels a little too, I wanted some of the actual footage, the transition of the footage to kind of seep in. So because these little elements are basically adjustment layers, I can go in and I can kind of dial back the opacity on the layer, and this kind of brings back some of the original transition element of the actual footage itself below it, and it gives in this particular instance, it was an unexpected, it was a happy accident, if you will, because it gave me this kind of otherworldly kind of ghosting effect going on here, which in my mind I was kind of like, oh yeah, that's it, that's exactly it. So again, even though I knew in my mind what I was going to do and the tools that I was going to use, there was still tweaking, there was still playing around, there was still, kind of some natural evolution, if you will, of the creative process of just trying to nail that kind of that exact feeling. And again, like, I could have just lived with, everything stock, but, I just wasn't happy with it. And, and so I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of time on this, but I still needed to get it done. And actually, I think the timing of everything worked out beautifully as well, too, because it just all came together perfectly.
Yeah, I think this is a type of transition that is actually very difficult to do if you haven't sort of thought a little bit ahead, because the reason it works is because obviously you have come in and you've got those camera movements in mind straight away.
Correct.
And then you've used an effect over the top of it to try and enhance that, and then you've dialed that effect down to actually just make it not look like a sort of out of the box stock effect. You've actually put your own personal touch to it, and I think that's why it succeeds, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so like we're back here in the Premiere timeline, so I disabled the After Effects dynamic link there, and this is what it looks like just with those transition elements, and it's fine. It is what I was thinking in my head, but adding those those zoom those whip pan zoom effects on top of it, just really does give it. I've been using this phrase way more than I should be, but it gives it that extra special sauce, and that's in those details, in my mind carry through, and kind of the emotional impact of those choices. I really kind of feel like comes through when you're kind of watching this. It's a subconscious thing.
It's the difference between 90 and 100, right? Or whatever cliche you want to use. That special sauce, like the difference between a professional and somebody who's messing around. It's taken it to that next level. It's also, by the way, that I can tell with this project, this is probably one of those things that had to be taken away from you. All right, you probably would still be working on this, right now.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because the only person that made the choice of taking it away, if you will, was me, and that had more to do with the fact that, I don't know about you, Brian or Ben, but I get a little exhausted if I'm working on something a little longer than I probably should be. And that exhaustion is kind of the little bell notification of, okay, we need to finish this. You need to stop. You know, you've had your time to kind of play around, and we need to finish this and get it done. And, you know, and so once I actually got to, let me go back to the timeline here. Once I kind of got to where, actually, I don't have that cut here, but, in this particular version, once I kind of got to kind of that point, and again, like I said, I was here, and then I had this huge gap of stuff to fill before I got to that kind of final, you know, that final graphic card, so to speak. And I'm like, oh man, how am I going to fill out this? I mean, I've just spent a lot of time doing that. And so that was kind of going on in the back of my head, so to speak. And, you know, and I was having a hard time kind of visualizing what to put here. And so at this point was when I had kind of sent it to a few people that I know and trust, that will give me honest feedback, and, you know, kind of people that are at least a little bit more removed from this, and it's always, you know, anytime you're showing people something that you're working on, especially when it's a work in progress, and especially when it's people that don't know the process of creation, it can be a little nerve-wracking, because you don't know what you've not completed your vision yet. And so there are a lot of holes that, you know, in your head you want to finish, but you want to get somebody else's eyeballs on it just to kind of gauge kind of how they're feeling. So I was very selective in who I kind of sent it to. And the one universal comment that I got from the people that I showed it to was, kind of feels a little too long. And at first you sit there and say, you know, anytime you get any kind of criticism for something that you've made or that you've created, the first thought that goes through your head is, how dare you? How dare you criticize me? But the reality is, they're not doing it in a hurtful way. They're doing it in, hey, this might be better if you shorten it. And it's funny, because I got the same note from 3 different people or 4 different people. And immediately, again, after I got over that kind of hurt moment, that any creative person goes through when they've got criticism. After I got through that, you know, a few seconds of that, I was kind of like, wait, 3 people are saying the same thing. I need to listen to this. I need to listen to this note. So then the next thing was, okay, so what do I need to do? And again, you know, those same people said, you're kind of saying the same thing. Again, you're kind of being redundant. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that whole last minute, I already said that. And so then of course, the next thing that goes through my head is like, oh crap, am I going to have to go back and rescore this if I cut a minute out? And you know, and this is kind of where being an editor comes into play, because I was able to actually take that score, and I didn't go back and rescore anything, but I was able to pretty seamlessly cut out a minute of music to fit the minute of content that I was removing. And immediately when I did that and I played it back, the first thought that went through my head was, yes, this is it. This is exactly what it needs to be. And I knew that I was successful as my job as an editor, especially when it came to the music, is that my wife, who is a classically trained pianist, had no clue that there was an edit point in the music. Yeah. And her first comment was, I really, really love the music. And I was like, yes, score.
I mean, somebody should just hire your children right now, because you know, like, come on, what the heck's going on here?
So I actually just looked at the clock, Mr. Brownlee, and
oh my goodness, that's my job. You can't go now. I've got 2 pages of questions still to get through.
Oh no. I'm not telling you I'm leaving. I'm telling you, the only reason I was looking at that was because I know that we have people who come on here, and I want to be respectful of their time as well too. So I know that there are people who've joined this because they want the giveaway. I don't know if you're
I'll tell you what.
doing that.
What we'll do then is we will give away a prize now. Give away the big prize now, and then if you've got time, we can chat for another 15 minutes. And if people want to stay, then they are more than welcome to stay. Oh, here we go. We've got the prize coming up. Sean, congratulations! You have won 12 months of Boris FX Suite. Well done, Sean.
Oh, wow.
Well done,
oh,
Sean.
Man.
Sean Issam. If
you're never going to come out of
in
your
the
room.
chat, Sean, give us a wave.
Yeah.
This is everything that we make. So we've got Sapphire that we've seen today, Continuum, Mocha Pro, Silhouette, and Optics. So we'll be in contact with you in the coming days to say congratulations and get the license over to you as well. So well done, Sean.
Congrats, Sean. That's an amazing Boris FX Suite, big boy toys, right? Everything.
Yeah, no kidding.
For some reason,
well, talk about having an agony of the choice of tools that you want to use. You know, that's it.
By the way, Ben, for some reason, I don't know why, but I just deleted the Boris FX Suite graphic from the project, which was probably not the best move. I was like, would be in my head. I was thinking, it'd be nice to have a nice graphic to show this. Where is it? Oh yeah, I just
certainly would.
I just deleted it. Why not? One thing I want to point out is we're going to be doing these live stream on a pretty regular basis, and how it works with the chat is, after this live stream, obviously we just gave away a suite to Sean. We're gonna reset that little chat panel until the next live stream, right? So, we'll probably be doing these once every couple weeks. So come back and sign back up basically, and you can be entered to win. You can enter once per day, and there's a bunch of kind of cool different things. How you can get multiple entries. You can like us on LinkedIn. You can look at a YouTube video. And so as we kind of put new ways to enter, that's my way of saying that if you kind of are looking for a way to get the Boris FX Suite for free, come back and sign up every day, and then we'll give it away at the next live stream, and then we'll kind of keep doing it again. So definitely come back to borisfxlive.com and sign up. That's it.
It's a fantastic prize, prize, and
my
great
shill.
pitch.
You like that?
It's very good pitch. Yeah,
nice.
I like that.
I have
people
so
how
many...
to fiddle the system as well.
Yeah, how to rig the system. I have so many questions, but one of the things, Ben, that has fascinated me about this project is that that you're a true triple threat on this, right? Because you were producer. You were
yes.
Well, we'll talk about in the nitty gritty triple threat. You were animator, writer,
yeah.
I would say, animator, compositor, and composer as well. But you also worked without a producer, which, knowing you and probably all of us at some point, that's a very a rare and beautiful thing to have to do
it's
that.
funny.
And I'm just curious. What was that like? Because you know what I mean. It's very rare, and I don't know if my own gut instinct of how awesome that would be is true, or were there negatives? Were there positives? What was it like doing a real pro project like this, and not obviously I cut my a wedding video or something,
right?
But then of course my wife's the producer.
You're a better man than me.
That's a whole nother thing, But really, you were the functional role of producer on this, and I'm sure there was a whole bunch of producing that went into it when you talked about searching for images and kind of even coming up with a raw creative. So what were the ups and downs of kind of that person being you and not somebody else that you can complain about to your friends?
Yeah. So, the short answer is it's both good and bad because, again, speaking to what I was saying earlier about limitations, when you have limitations, or even when you have, Brian, you know this as well too, as editors, and Ben, this as well too, as editors, we oftentimes almost always working in an edit bay with a producer. and and there's a producer that's sitting there with you, helping you fashion kind of the story of what you're trying to tell. And in most cases, like on all reality shows, almost all reality shows, there's a producer for every segment. And then when you get into scripted, whether it's comedy or drama, the producer, if you will, sometimes that you're limited to the script, what's on the page. And television is a writer's kingdom. And so most writer executive producers want to see what they wrote on the screen, and they wrote it for a very specific reason. And so there's some limitations in that. And I'm going to give a little bit of a plug for my channel. I have an episode of In the Biz coming up with one of the editors of Mandalorian, and that was one of the things that we kind of talked about, is that what is editing a show like that? I mean, how you must have had a massive amount of cooks in the kitchen. And so that will probably be hitting the airwaves next week. So it's liberating, but it's also daunting, because you're the one that's doing all of the work. And one of the things that you come to realize really quickly is why it's one of the reasons I love the filmmaking process altogether, is it's collaborative. And I actually had to learn that the hard way in film school. When I was in film school and we did our first group project, I got the lowest grade, and I was frustrated as to why I got the lowest grade. And I asked my teacher, and I'm like, why did I get the lowest grade? And because in determining our overall grade, we actually had to kind of write down our experience of the project and whatnot. And my teacher told me, she's like, because everybody said that you took over, and that you and I'm like, well, but they were wrong. I mean, they wanted, if I would have done what they wanted to do, we wouldn't have even had an exposed film to show. And she's like, yeah, but that's not the point. And kind of like, and it was hard to hear. But as I have grown and evolved and worked in the entertainment industry for over 20 years now, I can absolutely 100% tell you, you need to have people involved. You need to, there's a reason there are so many different jobs on a particular film, because, when you have somebody, a producer or whoever it is, when they're the ones that are doing the research, when they're the ones that are finding the images or finding the footage, that frees you up to be able to focus on something else. And, it's the same thing in the actual production process. There's a reason there's an assistant director, and there's a cinematographer, and there's a camera operator, and there's a reason there's 50 people on a set, because everyone has one specific job, and they're focused on that one specific job that allows everyone else to focus on their specific job. So, I've had the fortunate experience in the past of being able to specifically focus on directing and having my cinematographer worry about all the shots and how that looks. And it's extremely liberating. So even having those limitations is liberating. It is freeing. Now, in this particular instance, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, it was, obviously next to near impossible to have somebody come in and help me do some of this stuff, even remotely. But the other part of it too is I don't have a budget for this thing. I didn't have any money. So I am a big believer in making sure that people are paid for the job that they do. And so because of that, I, call it silly pride or whatever it is. I didn't feel right about going and asking other people to, to kind of take on a job that I don't have money to pay them for, especially when, especially in a pandemic when it's feast or famine. And so they have to, I'm not going to tell someone, no, you can't take that job because you got to work for me for free, so, I was able to kind of focus on this, and, and I had, again, that was the other part of it too, is that I gave myself kind of a little bit of a time restraint. So, I in the back of my head, I'm always sitting there thinking, okay, I need to move on. I need to move on. So it's funny because on some levels, I'm sitting there thinking like a producer, I need to get this done. You need to get this done. You need to get this done. There's a deadline that, well, there wasn't technically a deadline, but also at the same time too, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm sitting there as the director and, and the creator, and I'm like, yeah, I need to tweak this a little bit more. I need to do this. I need to do that. So, plus also too, I needed to get this done. For me, kind of one of the bigger, kind of deadlines, if you will, is I needed to get this done before school started for the kids, because they were going to be doing school at home. And once that started, it was almost going to be impossible to do any work during the day. And so, so again, a lot of the stuff kind of all fell into place and it happened quick. So, that's a long way of answering your question, which is it's good and bad, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend, nor would I look to do this on the next project. In fact, Winbush and I are already kind of talking about the possibility of doing something together as well too, because yeah, it's just you need the collaboration, but at the same time too, you need to split the duties, because it frees you up to focus on the things that you need to focus on. So
it's a great answer, Ben. No, it's so true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I always tell people, people always, somebody's starting out, people want advice, right? I always say, like, your number one skill is learning to work with other people. I mean, how many times I know the three of us have all said it. I'll take 100% someone who's dependable, can work with people, is not a diva, over the most talented person, because there's always has to be a team involved. I've worked with some phenomenal producers in my time, like Sarah Williams, Amy McCoy, Penny Benetovich. Like, some of these like producers, like when you get into a groove, it becomes a truly like symbiotic relationship, right? That
correct. Absolutely,
it allows you to become your best creative self, because, by the way, they're dealing with all the stuff that you shouldn't have to deal with, and ruins
correct, absolutely,
whatever vibe you got going on,
Yeah, most big directors work with the same people just about all the time. The best example is Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg has worked with the same editor since he started. Since the first movie that he worked on with this particular editor. Michael Kahn has been his editor on every film. Janusz Kaminski has been a cinematographer since Schindler's List.
Yeah,
and even before Schindler's List,
Scorsese, right? Like long time teams.
Exactly.
Long time teams.
Exactly. Yes. What's his name? Not Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah, Tarantino. She passed away.
Tarantino.
Right?
Thank you,
Sally.
Tarantino and his.
Yeah, I'm blanking on her.
And Sally Menke.
Yeah, she passed away, right?
She passed away. Yeah.
Yeah, just.
And in my opinion, the mark that she made on his films, because the films that she edited are actually my favorite films.
Oh, agreed.
I haven't liked his later stuff, but that's another discussion.
I can't even, by the way, imagine the simple, terrifying thought of editing for Quentin Tarantino. It's just like,
yes, yeah, no, I know.
Talk about someone who knows what they want and is hard-headed, and like I can't even imagine being able to get your.
Well, but that speaks to who she was as a powerhouse herself, to be able to tame that that creative brain of his into and fashion it into something that was actually watchable. So it's it's there, and the reason why these filmmakers use the same people over and over again is the unwritten shorthand that is there. Spielberg doesn't have to go to Janusz and say, hey, I need it lit a specific way, because Janusz knows. And one of my favorite pieces of film history is, it's also the same reason why John Williams scores every Spielberg film. There's just an unwritten language that's going on there, and I remember when, when Williams played for Spielberg, kind of the theme to kind of E.T. I mean, it just sparked, this burst of creative energy inside of Spielberg that he literally, because I remember, I think it's the last reel of E.T. is Spielberg went in and recut the entire scene to fit the music, which is unheard of. It, especially at the time that it happened, nobody had ever done that. It was always rescored to the picture. The picture was always locked first before it was scored. And, so now, of course, with technology being what it is, you can pretty much go into the process at any point and change things. But even to this day, it almost never happens where the film is re-edited to match the score. So, so there's a shorthand that comes with working with the same people over and over again. But then you have directors who actually love the creative challenge of working with different people all the time. And, so, there's pros and cons to, kind of both ideas of working with different people or working with the same people. And, but, I have to say, I love working with my friends, and I love working with people that are equally as passionate as I am about a particular thing, because their passion drives my passion. And as you said, Brian, too, I'm willing to let go of somebody's technical skills as long as they're a great person and they contribute to the process. If you need a little bit of time to kind of figure out how the Avid works, great. Take your time to figure out how Avid works. You're a Final Cut editor. Okay. We can consider working in Final Cut, so there are things that I'm willing to overlook for the right person that will come in and contribute to the benefit of the project. And I, like you, have had the privilege of working with some really great really great producers, and I've also had the privilege of working with some really bad producers. And
we've all had that privilege.
Yeah.
No, it's so true what you're talking about, working with someone who can work with people. I always like to think that, if you're working with someone and you are, say, dealing with technical issues, it's just where you've met them in their path.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten there
correct.
yet, right? But when you meet someone who's a diva and has attitude, guess what? That path is finished, right? Like they've gotten there. Like, well, you're never going to go back, right? So
it's funny. I had a conversation with somebody many years ago about, they moved out to Hollywood, and they wanted a career out here. And the first question that I get asked is, okay, so how does somebody go about finding work out here? And I'm like, you moved out here without knowing the answer to that question? I mean, that in and of itself is ridiculous. But the other part of it too is that, I in the entertainment industry, I think there are three kinds of people. There are most creative people are introverts, and so it's very hard for them to be social and to socialize. So, you have people who are extremely talented but might not have the appropriate people skills to be able to kind of navigate a collaborative process like filmmaking, but people put up with that because they're extremely creative. And then you have people who might be marginally creative, might be marginally talented, but they're really personable people. They know where all the parties are happening. They know where to get the good drugs. Don't do drugs. And people always want to have them around because they're the life of the party. They might not be the best cinematographer or the best camera operator. That doesn't matter, in the grand scheme of things. And then you have people who are both. They're really great people to work with, and they're really talented, and they're really passionate. And so it's, you have to figure out kind of where you fall into that process, but you also have to know too that because the filmmaking process is so collaborative, if you don't have a modicum of ability to be able to work with people, you're going to have a harder time. At the very least, you need to have that ability to where you can kind of get a reputation like a Tarantino or Michael Bay or somebody like that, who, okay, this person is not the best human being to work with, but you know, they make good movies, they make blockbuster movies. Okay, let's join up with them. You know, I mean, James Cameron was, you know, is a notorious taskmaster. You know, and some of those traits have to do with, they have such a clear vision in their head that they're not willing to compromise, and sometimes that stubbornness translates into just a really bad human being. And you know, sometimes they are just a really bad human being.
Speaking of really bad human beings, I am going to have to stop this.
You're gonna kill it.
I've got to stop it. We could literally we could go on. No, I've done. It's 8:30 in the evening time. So I think we've learned many things here today, but I think one of the biggest things we've learned is that we need to have Ben back on again for another live stream, because we haven't even scratched the surface of the surface. This is fascinating. I've got, like, I came in prepped with lots of questions. I've gotten to 2 of them. Everything else has been work, you know, with chat, and then Ben just being able to talk. So this is this has just been great.
This is the problem. I probably should have prefaced this whole live stream by saying you're probably not going to get a word in edgewise.
No,
I probably should have known that.
It's, you know, obviously, Ben, you're a very compass speaker. You know, I mean, you know this stuff back and forth, so it's always a pleasure to hear you talk. Let's pitch your podcast, man. In the Biz. Tell everybody about In the Biz.
Oh, so I have a show on my channel called In the Biz, and the idea kind of behind the show is kind of a continuation of kind of what this idea is that I want to give people kind of a glimpse at the process of filmmaking, whether it's television or film or whatever it is. And so I have 6 episodes right now. Got a new one coming up. I'm doing an interview later today for another episode. So so you can go to my channel. You can look for beMOTION.DESIGN on YouTube. I think you might have to actually put in one word. I don't think you need to put in the dot, but you can also look for, you can also just search for my name and you'll find it as well too, Ben Eshagpoor.
And we'll also put a link to it in the in this,
that works perfectly.
Video as well, of course.
That works perfectly. And also on that channel in the coming weeks, I'm actually going to be doing some breakdowns, some specific breakdowns on shots and stuff like that that I did in here as well too. So if we do decide to have kind of another live stream or do another live stream, we can delve deeper into some of those things as well too. So
cool,
fantastic,
it's great. I really enjoyed like the In the Biz with Winbush, with John Dickinson. Shout out to Winbush out there. If anybody's unfamiliar with that, looking to get into Unreal graphics, definitely type in Winbush into YouTube. Yeah. You want to learn about the mega scans that Ben kind of like tipped at, that I was like, we could spend a whole hour on mega scans.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Using them, unbelievable. Full. I mean, what's the elevator pitch for Megascans Quick? I mean, I just think of it as every single 3D model you ever wanted for free, right? But it's a huge, massive library, and it's funny because you'll find things in there that you will not be able to find anywhere else. Again, there are also things too where it's like, okay, I need this or I need that, and so it's an ever-growing library of content, and it is for $20 a month. It is a steal, and it's not just 3D. It's not just a 3D model assets like landscapes and kinds of other things. It's also textures and textures that have that you can use in any render engine. And so for me, having both a 3D model library and a
a texture library like that is just phenomenal. It's just absolutely amazing. I've actually been using their textures a lot lately. And that's the other thing, for me in 3D, I consider myself to be a 3D generalist. I use it as a tool. I like using it as a tool like I did in this particular film, where it's helping me to flesh out a particular idea or anything like that. But I am by no means a texture artist or a rigger or any of those specialized areas of 3D. And so for me, I like to be able to have a model that's built that I don't have. I mean, there is something that is relaxing about actually building model. It's one of the things where I followed, John Dickinson on YouTube as well too, because he has taken 3D modeling into, another realm in terms of helping people to learn how to 3D model, because, it's really, really great. And his training with making it look great before transitioning into working for Boris FX, that actually took some of the fear out of modeling for me and made it that much more enjoyable. So, so I don't use it in the same way that, that people like David Ariev or even Beeple for that matter. I don't use it. Well, actually Ariev is probably the best example, because, he just does some. Ryan Talbot is also another really good one. He created a short film recently that is 100%, 3D, which I major props to people who create stuff like that, because I don't know that I have the patience necessarily to do something like that. But for me, and similarly to music as well too, I just want to create. And so I need a tool that gets out of the way of me creating and allows me to be able to either pop a preset on there and start from there, or, allows me to be able to figure out how to use something quickly to get the idea out of my head. Because for me, that's the ultimate goal, is getting the idea out of my head. And so having 3D models and textures available to me, to be able to do that and get things done quickly that's the key for me. So, and that was a really long answer.
If we keep going,
this is how we.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say Mr. Dickinson will be waking up in Sydney, Australia, if we keep going.
I'm intentionally trying to drag this out to 2 hours.
Dial him in right now. Alrighty.
Cool. Well, this is it. No, I'm wrapping it up. I'm not letting you have another word. Ben,
question.
You're done. That's it. No more questions.
Quick, Ben.
We do have to go.
Where can people find you? Where can people find you online if they want to follow you?
Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is beMOTION_design, I think. And then you can find me on Instagram at beMOTION.design. And so those are probably the two best places to get a hold of me. I have a Facebook page, but I don't use it as much as I should. Same with LinkedIn. So Twitter and Instagram are probably the two preferred social media choices.
I have your website up right now, beMOTION.design.
Oh, perfect.
It's your blog, your portfolio spot. But all your training is on there as well. So.
Oh, and there will be a T-shirt coming soon to the website called Eskalo for Life. So,
I love it. I love it. There's a crazy German out there by the name of Ivar Beer who will buy one instantaneously.
Oh, great, awesome! I'll look for him.
100%.
I'll look for him on the socials.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Ben. Great job and fascinating to talk.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
If you've enjoyed it, be sure to hit the little thumbs up button. Make sure you hit the like button just to show Ben a little bit of love. And that'll be one. No, not me, Ben. Thank you for putting my my name right there. That made it look really, really egotistical.
Will you give me
our lovely guest, Ben. Thank you very much. But no, it's been wonderful. I'm very much looking forward to having these be part of our life from now on.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I hope you will be joining us again soon.
I
is great.
will do it in a heartbeat. So just let me know when.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
We will
Thank you,
be
Ben.
in touch.
All right.
And I'll leave it to Brian to have the last word then, because he obviously wants to switch to a full camera shot of himself.
Did you? By the way, did you see? You probably didn't even notice my camera fall down mid presentation. I need a sandbag, right? Because I don't know. Ben got me excited or something, and I hit something, and the whole thing came down. So thank you, Ben, so much.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Brownlee. I'm going to you full to take us home.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Ben, for being here as our lovely guest. And thank you very much to Brian for doing a fantastic job knocking his camera down. My name is Ben Brownlee, and I will see you again at the next Boris FX live event. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.